My name is Amelia, and I am 33 years old. The day my brother stole my future, he did it with a smile, a perfectly tailored suit, and a PowerPoint presentation that used my own words against me. I sat in the back of my parents' cavernous living room, invisible, as he pitched my business idea, the culmination of 2 years of my life's work, as his own brilliant vision. My parents, who had dismissed my concept as a cute hobby just weeks before, were captivated. They wrote him a check that day, the kind of check that could launch a dream. My dream. He never looked back. For years, I watched from afar as he became the celebrated tech wunderkind, the visionary on magazine covers. Then, one rainy Tuesday, 8 years later, he showed up at the gleaming headquarters of my company, the one I built from the ashes of his betrayal, his eyes hollow with desperation. He came to beg for a job. What he didn't know was that I had been waiting for this day, not with malice, but with a meticulously prepared receipt for everything he had cost me. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about the most important job interview of my life, hit like and subscribe to hear more true stories about betrayal, resilience, and the sweet, quiet justice of building your own success. Before the great betrayal, my life was a study in quiet dedication. I was a software engineer with a passion for sustainable agriculture. By day, I worked at a mid-level tech firm writing code for logistics software. By night and on weekends, I was in my garage, surrounded by wires, LED panels, and trays of vibrant green sprouts. I was developing a prototype for what I called Garden, a smart, modular, vertical hydroponic system designed for small urban spaces. It wasn't just a planter, it was an ecosystem. An AI-driven app would monitor the plants, adjusting light, water, and nutrients for optimal growth, making it possible for anyone to grow their own fresh produce in a tiny apartment. It was my heart, my soul, and my secret obsession. My older brother, Julian, was the family's designated star. At 35, he was a charismatic sales executive with a magnetic personality and a talent for making other people's ideas sound revolutionary. He had our parents, Richard and Eleanor, completely under his spell. While I was celebrated for my practicality and self-sufficiency, which were code words for boring and self-sufficient, Julian was lauded for his vision and ambition, which were code words for charming and financially dependent. Our parents had funded his first failed startup, a luxury subscription box for dogs, and co-signed on the mortgage for his sleek downtown condo. My own down payment for my modest suburban bungalow came from years of disciplined saving, a fact they pointed to with pride, never recognizing the disparity. "Amelia has always been so sensible with money," my mother would say, as if it were a genetic trait rather than a necessity born from their unequal support. After 2 years of relentless work, my Garden prototype was finally ready. It was a beautiful, elegant tower of brushed aluminum and glowing lights with healthy lettuce and herbs growing in its stacked pods. I had also completed a 60-page business plan detailing market analysis, production costs, and a 5-year growth strategy. I was ready. I invited my parents and Julian over for dinner, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and terror. This was my moment to finally show them what I had been working on, to prove that my hobby was a viable, innovative business. I unveiled the prototype after dinner. I walked them through the technology, showed them the app on my tablet, and explained the market potential. My mother was politely impressed. "Oh, that's very clever, dear. You could sell these at the farmer's market." My father was more dismissive. "The hardware market is brutal, Amelia. What do you know about manufacturing, about supply chains? It's a nice project, but it's not a real business." But Julian was quiet. He walked around the prototype, his eyes gleaming with a look I mistook for admiration. He asked sharp, insightful questions about the AI, the scalability, the branding. I answered everything eagerly, thinking he was the only one who truly understood. At the end of the night, he clapped me on the shoulder. "This is really cool, sis. Seriously. But Dad's right, it's a tough market. You should be proud of what you built, though." I went to bed that night feeling a familiar mix of disappointment and resolve. They didn't get it, but that was okay. I would find investors who did. 2 weeks later, my mother called, her voice buzzing with an excitement I hadn't heard since Julian's last promotion. "You will not believe the wonderful news. Julian has had the most brilliant idea. He's going to change the world." She explained that Julian had developed a concept for a revolutionary urban gardening system. He was calling it Verdant. It was a sleek, modular, AI-powered hydroponic tower for city dwellers. My blood ran cold. "Mom, that's my idea. That's Aura Garden. I showed it to you 2 weeks ago." There was a brief, uncomfortable pause. "Don't be silly, Amelia. This is completely different. Julian has a real business plan, a marketing strategy. He's already talking to investors. Your little garden was a science project. This is a company." That Saturday, Julian held an investor presentation in my parents' living room. He had taken my business plan, redesigned it with slick graphics, and was presenting my data, my market research, my words as his own. I watched numb with disbelief as my father wrote him a check for $200,000, the seed money I had hoped to ask for. This is what real vision looks like. My father announced to the room, beaming at Julian. My brother caught my eye from across the room and gave me a small, apologetic shrug, as if to say, "Sorry, sis, that's just business." That night, I packed a bag. I left a note on my parents' kitchen counter that said only, "Congratulations on your new investment." I drove to my bungalow, put it on the market the next day, and accepted the first reasonable offer. I sold my prototype to a small tech incubator for a fraction of its worth, just to have enough cash to move. I left my job, my city, and my family and moved to a small, cheap apartment in a city hundreds of miles away. I was broken, betrayed, and completely alone. Julian had stolen my business, but he had also stolen my faith in the one thing I thought was unconditional, my family's love. I vowed that day that I would build something new, something so successful, so undeniably mine, that they would never be able to dismiss me or my work again, and I would do it completely on my own terms. The first few years were a brutal lesson in humility and resilience. I took a contract job at a large agricultural technology firm, a corporate titan that was the antithesis of my startup dream. The work was impersonal and creatively stifling, but it paid the bills, and more importantly, it was a masterclass in the very things my father claimed I knew nothing about: large-scale manufacturing, international supply chains, and corporate finance. I was a sponge, absorbing every piece of information, working longer hours than anyone else, and building a reputation as the quiet engineer who always delivered. While Julian was being featured in tech magazines as the visionary founder of Verdant, I was living in a tiny studio apartment eating instant noodles and saving every spare dollar. His company, fueled by my parents' money and his own charisma, took off like a rocket. Verdant towers became the trendy new accessory for affluent millennials, more of a status symbol than a practical garden. He was praised for his design-first approach, something he lifted directly from a section of my business plan. Every glowing article, every interview where he talked about his late-night coding sessions was a fresh twist of the knife. I channeled that pain into my work. I saw the flaw in Julian's model because it was the flaw I had intended to fix in phase 2 of my own plan. Verdant was a consumer product, fragile and high maintenance. The real market, the real revolution, was in commercial-scale urban agriculture. After 3 years at the corporate firm, I had saved enough to take a risk.
I quit my job, and with a brilliant but pragmatic finance expert named Ben Carter, whom I'd met at my old job, I co-founded Iosphere Innovations. We had a new vision. We weren't building pretty gadgets for yuppie apartments. We were building industrial-grade, closed-loop agricultural systems for restaurants, corporate campuses, and research institutions. Our systems were not just about growing lettuce. They were about creating self-sustaining biomes that recycled 99% of their water and produced zero waste. It was a bigger, bolder, and far more complex idea than AuraGarden. Our first contract was with a high-end restaurant chain that wanted to grow its own rare herbs on site. We designed and installed a custom biosphere unit in their flagship location's basement. The project was a resounding success, cutting their produce costs by 40% and giving them an incredible marketing story. Word spread. We landed a contract with a university to build a research-grade system for their botany department. Then came a deal with a major tech campus to install biosphere units in all their cafeterias, providing fresh greens for thousands of employees daily. We never took on venture capital, instead bootstrapping our growth, a lesson Ben had drilled into me. Slow, sustainable growth, he'd say. We own our success and our failures. While Biosphere was quietly and profitably growing, I kept an eye on Verdant. The cracks were beginning to show. Tech blogs started publishing articles about the company's high customer churn rate. The Verdant towers were beautiful, but they were also prone to malfunction. The app was buggy, the nutrient pods were overpriced, and customers complained that their effortless gardens required constant troubleshooting. Julian was a master of the launch, but he had no idea how to build a sustainable business. He had focused all his resources on marketing and design, neglecting research and development. He had stolen my prototype, but he hadn't stolen my brain. He couldn't innovate past my initial idea. The first sign of real trouble came in the form of a phone call from my mother, the first in over 5 years. Her voice was a syrupy blend of fake concern and carefully planted questions. "Amelia, darling, I was just thinking of you. How is your little job going? We saw that Julian's company, Verdant, is looking to expand its R&D department. Perhaps you could send him your resume. It would be so wonderful to have you working for your brother, to have the family back together." I felt a cold, calm fury settle over me. They weren't just content with his success. They now wanted me to come and fix the company he had stolen from me, to work for him. "I'm not looking for a job, Mom. My own company is doing quite well." "Oh, that's nice, dear," she said, the dismissive tone unchanged after all these years. "Well, do think about it. Julian is so generous. I'm sure he'd find a place for you." That was when I knew his company was in real trouble. They were deploying their secret weapon. Me, the responsible fixer. I politely ended the call and immediately did a deep dive into Verdant's financials. What I found was shocking. They were burning through cash at an incredible rate. Their profit margins were razor thin, and they were facing 2 class action lawsuits over faulty hardware. The final act began a year later. An article in a major tech journal detailed Verdant's spectacular fall from grace. They had failed to secure a new round of funding and were on the verge of bankruptcy. The visionary wunderkind Julian was being called a one-trick pony. The public narrative had shifted. His charm had worn off, revealing the lack of substance underneath. 2 weeks after that article was published, my receptionist buzzed my office.
"Miss Evans, there's a Mr. Julian Evans here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." My heart began to hammer against my ribs. 8 years. 8 years of silence. And now he was here. I took a deep breath, straightened my jacket of my suit, and looked around my corner office at the city skyline stretching out below me, at the framed patents on my wall, at the thriving biosphere prototype humming quietly in the corner. "Send him in," I said, my voice perfectly steady. He looked smaller than I remembered. The custom-tailored suit was still impeccable, but it hung on a frame that had lost its arrogant posture. The confident smile was gone, replaced with a nervous, twitching thing that didn't reach his eyes. They were the eyes of a man who had been publicly humbled, a look I had never seen on him before. He stood awkwardly in the center of my spacious office, taking in the evidence of a success that dwarfed his own. "Julian, wow, this place is impressive," he said, his voice trying for its old, charming cadence, but falling flat. "Julian," I said, not standing, gesturing to the chair opposite my large, minimalist desk. "This is a surprise. What can I do for you?" The power dynamic was so completely reversed it was almost dizzying. The last time we had a business discussion, I was the nervous petitioner, and he was the confident judge. He sat, perching on the edge of the chair as if he might need to make a quick escape. "Look, I know it's been a long time, and I know things ended badly between us." He began, fumbling with the handle of his expensive leather briefcase. I remained silent, letting him struggle. This was his meeting. "I've been following the success of Biosphere. It's incredible what you've built. The B2B model, it's genius, truly." He was trying to flatter me, the old Julian tactic. It was like watching a magician perform a trick after you've already figured out how it's done. "To what do I owe the pleasure, Julian?" I asked again, my tone polite but firm. He took a deep breath, and the facade finally crumbled. "I need a job, Amelia. Verdant, it's over. They're selling our assets for scrap. I'm ruined. I have nothing. I'll do anything. I could run your sales department. I could handle marketing. I know this industry inside and out." I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers. The moment I had imagined for 8 years was finally here. The script was playing out exactly as I had known it would. "Why would you think I would hire you?" I asked, my voice genuinely curious. He looked confused, as if the answer should be obvious. "Because I'm your brother. Because we're family." "Family," I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air. "That's a word you seem to remember only when you need something. The last time we spoke of family, you were stealing my life's work while our parents wrote you a check." His face flushed with a mixture of shame and anger. "That's not fair. I took your idea and made it better. I made it real. You had a prototype in a garage. I built a brand." "You built a brand on a faulty product that you didn't understand," I corrected him. "You didn't innovate, you imitated. And when the imitation wasn't enough, the whole thing fell apart. That's not vision, Julian. That's theft followed by incompetence." He flinched as if I had slapped him. "I came here to ask for help, not to be insulted," he said, his voice rising. "You came here because you've exhausted all your other options," I said, my voice remaining level. "You came here because you see my success and you think you're entitled to a piece of it, just like you thought you were entitled to my idea 8 years ago. You haven't changed at all. You just ran out of other people's money to burn." I opened a drawer in my desk and pulled out a folder. It was a copy of my original Aura Garden business plan, the one he had stolen. I slid it across the desk towards him. "I believe this is yours," I said. "Or rather, you made it yours. I kept the original, along with the time-stamped emails to my patent lawyer and the sworn affidavits from my university professors who reviewed my initial concept. I've held onto this for 8 years, Julian. A little insurance policy." He stared at the folder, then at me. The dawning horror in his eyes was a sight to behold. He finally understood. This wasn't an interview. This was a reckoning. What
"What do you want?" he stammered. "I want you to understand something. You didn't just steal a business from me. You stole my trust. You stole my family. You took my passion and twisted it into a cheap marketing gimmick, and you did it without a moment of remorse." I stood up and walked to the large window overlooking the city. "I built this company, Biosphere, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I built it because you left me with nothing. I worked 80-hour weeks. I lived on savings that couldn't have covered your monthly car payment. I did the hard, unglamorous work that you always avoided. This success is not ours, Julian. It is mine." I turned back to face him. "So no, I will not give you a job. I will not let you attach your name to this company. I will not let you ride the coattails of the success I built from the rubble of the life you destroyed." He stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. The charismatic, confident Julian was gone, replaced by a desperate, broken man. "But what do I suppose to do?" he asked, his voice the small, lost sound of a child. "You're supposed to do what I did," I said, my voice softening slightly, not with pity, but with a sense of finality. "You're supposed to start over, from the bottom, on your own. It's called building character. You should try it sometime." I pressed the intercom on my desk. "Catherine, Mr. Evans is leaving now. Please validate his parking." He stood slowly, picking up his briefcase, the business plan still lying on my desk like a tombstone. He walked to the door, then paused, his hand on the handle. "I really am sorry, Amelia," he said, his voice barely audible. "I know, and I know." He was. Not for the betrayal, but for the failure. He was sorry he had gotten caught, sorry his stolen dream had crumbled. He still didn't understand the real crime. As the door closed behind him, I sank back into my chair, the adrenaline draining away, leaving me feeling strangely empty. I had won. I had gotten my justice. But the cost had been my entire family. A week after Julian's visit, a large manila envelope arrived at my office. It contained no letter, just the key to my parents' house and a handwritten note from my mother. "We need to talk as a family. Please. Sunday dinner." The plea was a stark contrast to her usual demanding tone. Then my business partner saw the envelope on my desk. "The vultures are circling," he observed. "I think they're just confused," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "They saw one of their own fall from the sky. It's rattled them." I agreed to the dinner, partly out of a morbid curiosity, and partly because I felt a chapter wasn't truly closed until the epilogue was written. I arrived at my parents' house to a scene of quiet devastation. The usual air of performative success was gone. My father looked 10 years older. The confident bluster was replaced by a weary resignation. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed, and she moved around the kitchen with a slowness I'd never seen. Julian was there, looking like a ghost at his own funeral. He sat silently on the couch, staring at his hands. The dinner was the most honest meal we had ever shared. There was no pretense, no boasting. My father admitted that he and my mother had lost a significant portion of their retirement savings investing in Verdant's final desperate funding round. My mother confessed that the public shame of Julian's failure had been devastating for her social standing. "All my friends, their children are doctors, lawyers, and Julian was my tech genius. Now he's nothing," she said, the words a quiet admission of the shallow values that had driven her for so long. "He's not nothing," I said, surprising myself. "He's my brother, and he's at rock bottom. The question is what he's going to build from there." Julian looked up at me, his eyes filled with a desperate, unfamiliar flicker of hope. For the first time, he seemed to be seeing me not as a rival or a resource, but as a sister. The conversation that night was the beginning of a long, slow, and painful process of rebuilding. I never gave Julian a job at Biosphere. That boundary was non-negotiable. But I did give him the one thing I had needed 8 years ago,
a second chance on my terms. I paid for him to see a career counselor and a therapist. I gave him a small, personal loan, not a gift, with a strict repayment schedule to cover his living expenses for 6 months while he figured out his next move. "This is it, Julian," I told him when I handed him the check. "This is the only help you will ever get from me. Use it wisely." He did. He started from the bottom, taking a job in customer service for a small software company. He hated it, but he did it. He was humbled, forced to learn the parts of a business he had always disdained. He started paying back my loan $20 at a time every Friday. My parents, faced with their own financial reality, sold their oversized house and moved into a smaller, more manageable condo. My father took on consulting work, and my mother, for the first time in her adult life, got a part-time job at a local art gallery. The crisis had forced them to live within their means, and in doing so, they found a quieter, more authentic version of themselves. Our family relationships are not perfect. They are scarred and complicated, but they are, for the first time, real. We no longer perform for each other. We talk, we argue, we disagree, but we do it with a newfound honesty. The old dynamic of the star and the shadow is gone, replaced by a group of flawed adults trying to navigate a shared history. My company, Biosphere, continued to thrive. We became leaders in the urban agriculture industry, our technology helping to create sustainable food sources in cities around the world. My success felt earned, solid, and entirely my own. It wasn't the flashy media darling success Julian had chased. It was quiet, meaningful, and built to last. One day, about a year after our reconciliation dinner, I received a package at my office. It was a small, elegant hydroponic planter, a single pod growing a perfect, vibrant basil plant. The design was simple, efficient, and beautiful. A note was attached. "It's not an Aura garden. It's not a verdant. It's just a start. Thank you for everything, Julian." I placed the planter on my windowsill, where the sunlight caught its leaves. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was growth. And in the end, that was the business I had always been in. Have you ever had to watch someone else get credit for your hard work or ideas? How did you handle the injustice? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more stories about resilience and redemption. Remember that true success isn't just about what you build, but about what you overcome to build it. Thank you for listening, and may you always have the strength to reclaim your own story.